Hello and welcome to The Entrepreneurs on Monocle Radio, the show all about inspiring people, innovative companies and fresh ideas in global business. On today's programme, we're heading to Greece to shine a spotlight on two major industries in the country, shipping and silk. First, we welcome the founder of a software-as-a-service platform focused on automating and managing port-related costs for shipping companies.
Around $220 billion are being spent every year on disbursement accounting, on a manual process. We have created algorithms on how each port expense is being calculated in every port, terminal and berth around the world.
Then we'll meet the founder of a silk scarf gallery that showcases artist-designed pieces, blending Greek tradition with contemporary fashion and design.
Every scarf we produce is limited, 200 pieces max, and it comes with a concept card signed and numbered by the designer and by me.
This is The Entrepreneurs with me, Tom Edwards. You're listening to The Entrepreneurs. This week, Athens is hosting the world's biggest shipping trade show, the Posidonia International Shipping Exhibition. The event is expected to showcase more than 2,000 exhibitions and welcome some 40,000 visitors. One of the speakers at the event is Antonis Malaxianakis, the founder and CEO of Harbour Lab, a maritime software startup that uses technology to simplify port-related costs and help stakeholders make instant, well-informed financial decisions. Antonis stopped by Midori House to discuss leading innovation in the shipping industry. He began by telling me how integral the sector is to Greece.
20% of the global market of the global ships are owned by Greeks. So it is what we Greeks do actually great.
You're renowned the world over. Now, it's interesting, of course, Greece is a country, particularly sort of post-financial crisis that Monocle's gone back to again and again, and we're fascinated by its regenerative powers, even when the deck seemed stacked against it. And your business is interesting because it's looking at one of those heritage industries, of course, the Greek shipping business, but it's bringing this tech lens, I guess, to bear. Maybe just tell our listeners, first of all, what is Harbour Lab? What does it do and how does it fit into that amazing tradition in Greece?
Yeah, so Harbour Lab is a B2B vertical SaaS, software as a service, where we are responsible to automate, to check, let's say, all the expenses that occur to a vessel when it reaches a port. It's like you are going with your vessel into a parking, and each floor of the parking to have different pricing policies, each spot in each floor different pricing policy again, and depending on the size of the car and the number of the passengers, different pricing policy in each spot of the parking. So we're talking about chaos. I started working in the maritime sector back in 2013. I was one of those people actually checking what is called disbursement accounting, the expenses that are related to the vessel when it reaches the port, and have checked myself over 20,000 disbursement accounts manually. When I'm talking about manually, it's like the first couple of days they gave me a typing machine. I'm almost ready to cry. I was considered an innovator for bringing Excel into the company. So thankfully enough, however, I had great mentors, people that, they wanted to change the industry and actually believed in me and helped me be part of that great industry that we are in. An industry that I always wanted to be a part of since I was very young.
Exactly. This is a lovely story, but I imagine there must be plenty of stakeholders at different parts of the previous infrastructure for whom digitization, progress was the last thing that they would want to see because their interests would be quite bound up in these archaic ways. That must have been a problem, I sense already, as you said, if you're the big innovator with your Excel sheets. How do you get over that? Because it's very hard to ensure that everyone is being borne along in a huge global business. So how much of a problem was that, I guess?
So the market that we are in, disbursement accounting, it's around $220 billion are being spent every year on disbursement accounting, on a manual process. As you mentioned, there are many layers, let's say, in the ecosystem. So we are predominantly with three. The first one is the vessel itself and the shipping company. The second part are the port agents. And The third one are the port authorities. So what is happening, as I told you before, the problem is very complex about how its expense is being in each spot of the parking. However, what we have managed to do is that we have created algorithms on how each port expense is being calculated in every port, terminal and berth around the world. So port is the parking, terminal is the floor, and berth is the spot. So we have mapped thousands of ports already, but there are so many things that we haven't done and we need to do it, as fast as possible in order to help our industry.
Well, absolutely. And I guess that's where Harbour Lab's plans and expansion come into play. And obviously and I'll qualify this because obviously when we're going to just a little earlier in May, you announced an exciting funding round. Presumably that's critical because then you can turbocharge that progress you're describing and you can start to really address the scale, because it's one of those things that will only work if you have that total coverage, but presumably that comes at a big cost. So it must make a big difference to get investors on board who can power that journey for you.
Yeah, indeed. And we are raising now 15 million euros. And Atomico is the one leading, but also our partners from Notion Capital and Venture Friends also participated in this round. It is a very complex issue, the one that we are solving, so we need to be well capitalized for the next day. Predominantly we want to expand our business development segmentation, our go-to-market, let's say. Mm-hmm. We have already opened our office in Singapore and we are about to open our office in Japan. Those markets are very, very important for us because after Greece, Asia in total controls more than 50% of the global fleet. So it is important for us to actually have presence there. So we will predominantly invest, like most B2B SaaS startups, we will invest in sales and in software engineering. There are so many things now that we can do with artificial intelligence where we have started onboarding great software engineers and repatriating them back into Athens, which is something that we are very proud of as a company. Greek story is like a Cinderella. Now we are reborn. Everyone wants to come back home. So we are one of those opportunities where we want to bring people back.
And just on a personal level, did you always kind of know, or was it always a prerequisite that you would be working in Greece and kind of flying the flag? Because again, at Monocle, we talked a lot about that post-financial crash flight, and there's so many good stories of reshoring or people returning, even to take back over family businesses. Really, it's a really positive story. But I don't know, in your own journey, tell us a bit about that. Was there some flirtatiousness with other markets for a time? Or?
Yeah, well, there is a bit of a drama, let's say, in my story. My father died when I was in high school, so I had to step up in our family business to support my mother and my sisters. So I became a CEO of a business that I didn't want. We are selling outdoor furniture and pergolas, so nothing to do with shipping. However, since I remember myself, I always wanted to work in the industry. The main reason why was, my mother, although she was a housewife, she was the ambitious one in the family, and she used to read me books about, Onassis, Niarchos, the great Greek ship owners. So when I was 5 years old and they asked me at school, what do you want to become when you grow older? I was the very unpopular kid in school saying a ship owner. So I stayed in the family business I was the CEO from 2005 until 2013. So I saw the best days of the Greek economy, but then I saw the worst ones as well. 2013, my sisters wanted to join the family business. So immediately they became my exit strategy. I trained them, and when they felt all of them safe and comfortable, I said that for the first time I want to pursue my own dreams. Also, in my decision, I'm a very, very competitive guy, so I wanted to be the best in the best industry that we had in Athens. And this is how the journey started. Actually, I sent more than 300 CVs. Nobody replied. So one day I sold some furniture to a nice lady. When I was writing the receipt, I asked for her name. She told me. I assumed that she is a ship owner. She told me, yes, I am. With one hand, I gave the receipt. With the other, I gave the CV. 7 interviews later, I was hired as an unpaid intern. So This is how my journey starts. Okay. And from the moment that I joined the shipping company, this is when I started working on the problem that Harbour Lab is now solving.
Well, this is what I was going to ask you about, because Obviously, at Monocle, we take quite a keen interest in global infrastructure. We're super interested in supply chains. That's come into ever sharper focus since 2020, of course. But probably get a lot of lay persons around the world who say, oh, yeah, shipping, I know the problems, piracy in the Red Sea or rising fuel prices. Or then you get a moment like a large vessel blocking a key shipping channel. And suddenly everyone's an expert. In that context, Antonis, give us a sense of how big the problem is that you set out to solve, because obviously you had this analog experience with papers and this inefficiency, but in terms of how much it's hampering this mega business, what kind of damage does it do, or what kind of hindrance does it provide that there aren't better solutions?
I believe close to 80% of the global goods are being transported by vessels. So this is something that the majority of the people don't know. Our expenses, as I mentioned, are 220 billion. In an industry of 14 trillions, which is also something that people usually don't know. It is how our economy actually works, how the economies evolve. And we see from our side where we are getting paid every time a vessel goes to a port. So we have data about all the trends that follow in the global shipping. For example, now with the Red Sea crisis, vessels do not pass from the Suez Canal anymore, and they go to do their services, let's say, like take bunkers and do crew changes, meaning changes their personnel, in South Africa. Some of those vessels also change their route. They go now to load in US and discharge in Europe. So we see all those trends through Harbour Lab. It is actually fascinating to see. And what we have also observed is that trips now have become longer, meaning that the loading port and the discharge port are usually much further away. However, unfortunately, in our industry, freight rates also increase whenever there is a problem. So that's also part of the shipping economy.
And then in terms of the fix, so you've described some of the algorithmic fixes, a huge amount of data gathering. As you said, you've got to have footprints in these different markets. How do you ensure, because presumably the idea or the ultimate ambition is that Harbour Lab becomes the singular tool to govern these exchanges wherever you are. What are the impediments to doing that? Because we already said lots of stakeholders with differing interests, sometimes completely conflicting interests. So that's a big challenge for a founder like yourself, presumably.
Indeed. So what we are doing is that let me describe you a bit how disbursement actually work. So a vessel goes to a port. A few days before vessel's arrival, let's say, to the port, an agent requests $100,000. I'm giving you an example of this is the tickets, let's say. Now, what we used to do in the manual process is that we had to contact the port authorities, take what is called official port tariffs, which is 200 pages long, written in the local language of each port. So nobody actually read it. And we had to check and make the calculations manually. Now, what we have done with Harbour Lab is that we have managed to create those algorithms that immediately connect with what the agent submitted, and we highlight to the ship owners whether they should pay for those expenses, whether they shouldn't, or even if those expenses do not exist in the port and it is something that they have to go and dispute immediately with the agent. Indeed, when we started, we had the first problem that we identified was, okay, I can clearly see a path to victory, let's say, as we call it, with ship owners. But what about the supplier side? What about the agents? What are we going to do for them to help them? So one of the problems of our industry is that because of all those manual processes, there is no trust. Somewhere, someone, trust was lost. So what is happening is that the agents were sending their invoices. Ship owners paid 80% of that amount, and the rest of the 20% they paid it a year after. So agents were acting like banks. Because agents were getting delayed to be paid, they were overcharging the ship owners in the PDA. So this is the problem that we are solving, and we want to be a part, and this is our purpose as a company, is to build trust in the maritime ecosystem. This is why we exist. Unfortunately, in our industry, like all other industries, we've seen tendencies, let's say, in people that are not, let's say, very transparent.
That was very diplomatically put.
Yeah, thank you.
nicely
tried.
done.
So what we have managed to do with Harbour Lab is that through the algorithms, we consistently save from the ship owners $3,000 per port call, but we also have given access to the ship owners to evaluate the performing port agent. So now we have port agents that have great reviews, and we have managed to increase the volume of the vessels they handle in the port that they work, even by 3 times the volume they had before Harbour Lab. And it is important also to mention that maybe for the first time, there is a platform in shipping that is also responsible to do a thorough KYC investigation to all parties involved, both the ship owners, the cargo, and the port agents.
As a founder with the singular vision and you start to grow the business, there must be those moments, kind of pinch yourself moments where you can't believe it. Tell me a bit about them, because I know as you've grown, you've obviously managed to get businesses, big storied businesses, again, that our listeners probably know about, whether that's a sort of Great Easterns of this world or an Oldendorfs, this kind of thing. Do you sometimes look back to that kid really only who stepped up in the family business and say, oh my God, this is kind of what I was imagining or dreaming about? Is it hard to believe, or actually does it just feel like another milestone in the road?
Yeah, well, you're trying to make me emotional now.
I'm not trying it. It's an emotional story.
It's a dream come true for me. Indeed, as you mentioned, sometimes I really don't believe what's happening. When I started the whole business and they asked me, what is your dream account? I said Oldendorf, and everyone told me, no way. There is a reason for that. For so many years, they don't have a provider. They do the work the way that they do it. But immediately from the first meeting when I went in their premises and I told them my approach on how I want to solve the business, immediately we connected. And what I've learned in those years when, in the previous year I was leading the commercial side, let's say as well, is that the next generation of the people that will manage to succeed in sales, let's say in business development, will be the ones actually that create relationships with the people that buy the software. Shipping is famous about how relationships are, let's say, beneficial for the growth of a company. So it's a dream come true. I also had something that I have framed it in my office. When our Series A was oversubscribed, it was super fast, and we were lucky, let's say, that in all around before we were oversubscribed, and we selected the partners that we worked with. That's the case with Atomico as well, and for the ones that are not in the startup environment, there is what is called investment committee. So we had that investment committee, and I was pitching to Niklas Zenström, the guy that has created Skype, a guy that I admired and I have read everything the moment that I created my first B2B SaaS company. And afterwards he sent me an email telling me that he believes in the vision, that, because I also want to create and help create with other founders an ecosystem of startups in Athens. It is something that needs to be done because we have the capabilities, and we are hungry now as a nation. We want to succeed. So Nicholas afterwards sent me an email telling me that he believes in me, he believes in the idea, and he believes in the Greek ecosystem, and I have framed it in my office. So it was one of those moments.
Look, it's an amazing story. It's making me emotional. Antonis. Look, it's a great story. It's funny in that, I guess, the contemporary Greek epic of the story of shipping, this is but one chapter, but it's a pretty amazing one. And
thank you very much.
I can't wait to read what happens next, but it's been really lovely meeting you. Thanks for coming to see us.
Thank you very much for having me.
That was Antonis Malaxianakis, the founder and CEO of Harbour Lab. You can learn more about the business by heading to harbourlab.com. You're listening to The Entrepreneurs. We head now to the north of Greece, where there's one fashion company that's leaning into the country's historic Silk Road traditions and reviving manufacturing in the region's smaller towns in the process. Mantility works with dozens of Greek designers who develop digital prints for silk scarves that are sold online, as well as in a retail space and gallery in Athens. Monocle's Chris Chermak caught up with founder Vasiliki Zafiria Ypsilanti in Delphi earlier to talk about the importance of reviving rural areas. Vasiliki began by describing the region from which she hails.
My region is very famous for its history, but it's a bit poor as far as concerns the economy. But we are very lucky that we live for many years, except our studies, in Kavala, which is a very beautiful city, near to a very famous cultural heritage, UNESCO heritage site. We have a sea, we have mountains full of nature. We have a good quality of life there. We are a small city, and we decided to keep our offices in this small town.
And then tell me about Mantility. Just describe the business for me, what it is and how you started.
So Mantility started as an idea about 2017. I used to work in the public sector for many years as a public servant on European programs, implementation, but I wanted to make something different and something unique, and I wanted to start something that combines fashion, design, tradition, something that it would be like a collectivity. My academic background is on political science. I have a master's degree on cities diplomacy in law school, and afterwards in cultural studies, a second one. And I wanted to combine all these and make something different with many artists from Greece, because we have many designers that struggling to expose their work and maintain their creativity, but it's very difficult. So I made this platform. We call it a movement, a platform. It's a silk scarves gallery where all the artists can express their creativity on silk canvases. The silk is from Soufli, another small town from northern Greece with a big tradition on silk, and to maintain the Silk Road.
Tell me more about that. What does silk mean to Greece? The Silk Road, what does that mean to you? The history behind all of that?
There is a huge history because it was one of the crafts that used to bring joy and money, of course, to many families around Greece, especially in northern Greece and in Peloponnese. But Soufli was one of the most known place for silk. After 4 generations, this is the 4th generation now that runs the business. When we started, the factory opened just one day a week. It was pretty abandoned, but we saw the light because one of the key factors of the idea was that we saw that the development of digital printing will make easier the printing on silk, because until then it was very expensive to make silk scarves. So now here in 2024, the factory opens with 2 shifts all day. It works all day. The House of Dior prepared one of the biggest cruise collection in Soufli, and after that, Soufli changed all the mentality there, and they work a lot, and many people start working on silk again. This time, 2017, after hard times in Greece, the Greek design started to be again trendy and very classy and sophisticated. And I thought that one of these raw materials, silk, will be trendy again in Greece because of the digital printing. So I saw a light that if we combine all this and make a gallery and make it pretty unique, because there are many brands all over the world printing silk scarves now, not then, because of the digital printing. But We thought something different, many different designers from different fields of designs, architecture, graphic designers, graffiti artists, scenographers, photographers. Every designer you can imagine can use silk canvas to make a work, a piece of art that is wearable. Every scarf we produce is limited, and a limited run of 50 pieces, 100 pieces, 200 pieces max, depends on the designer, and it comes with a concept card signed and numbered by the designer and by me. So we combined all this stuff, and we think we made something unique.
Well, and tell me more about, I guess, just how challenging that was, given the history of silk production also in the north. I guess from your perspective, why had that become something that was dying out, and how difficult was it for you to convince these towns to restart production, to show them that there is a potential there?
It was very hard because I have to convince also myself, but they wanted to keep it alive, these people, because it was, as I told you, fourth generation. They had the history. The town is like, we saw some spaghetti movies, how we say it, Western, spaghetti westerns, that it's all abandoned, something like that. The Soufflé, I'm from Kavala. It's two different towns, about 2 hours distance, and I was pretty sad, but people there believed that we could make the change, and we made it. It was very important factor for us was the crowdfunding campaign. We ran a crowdfunding campaign on Indiegogo, and it took a lot of publicity in Greece in general, and people started to support this initiative, and now we are here. After these years, we have our base in Kavala. The production is soufflé. Designers, we started from 11 designs, and now we have 55 designers and 160 designs in only 2-3 years, because remember, we have COVID between these years after the crowdfunding campaign. So we are very happy. We feel very proud of this initiative, and we have a spot in Athens, in the bigger and most famous mall in Athens, where all the other brands are very, very famous and very, very expensive and luxury, and we are very honored to be there. And we have our e-shop, our e-gallery, where we send scarves all over the world, from Australia to United States, and of course in Europe, and we want to make more silk spots, to establish more silk spots around the world.
Tell me more about that international competition aspect, I suppose. How has that been going? What has it been like for you to, as a startup, using the history of silk and the Silk Road also in Greece, to really set yourself apart and compete with international brands?
We made few steps on this road, but we participated in 2 exhibitions in Monaco and in Paris. These few meetings we have and the people that came to meet us were excited. So we have our clients through our e-shop all over the world, but it's hard as a startup in Greece, and we need funding to make Mantility UK, Mantility Italy, Mantility Spain, and make silk spots around the cities. It's a big plan, but it's our dream, our vision. It's hard, but we are trying to set a business plan for Europe, one for USA and one for Australia, and we'll start with little steps. It's a long road, very long. It's very difficult because the institutions here are not very helpful with startups.
Tell me a little more about that. What is the challenge when it comes to Greece is coming up at this point, emerging from the crisis, but do you find it's still a challenge for an entrepreneur to really get the support you need?
Yes, and especially when you come from a cultural background, because as you can see, everyone says that the future of Greece and the main pillars of development is tourism and culture, and everything comes from there. But when we are talking about future investments, or they think that when we say startups, it's only about technology. Now it starts changing this field, but we have many steps and many difficulties because they don't understand that they have to invest also in creative industry, and there is something new also in startups like us. We are lucky because they can touch the silk, they can meet the designers, and we are lucky for that. But in general, it's very difficult.
Greece is so known for culture, tradition, tourism. Why is that something that's not supported in that way when it's what people outside of Greece would be interested in?
Yes, I'm talking about startups because investments in tourism is many, and we cannot. I think we over-exaggerate on investments on tourism, but I mean about small startups that want to introduce something different. But on culture, people are very disappointed that comes from cultural background or they have ideas because they cannot showcase their work. That's why we started, because we saw that all the people that comes from fine arts and architecture, they cannot express their creativity and they cannot find a platform to showcase their work. And that's why we are a bit famous in Greece, Mantility, because we are only us and I don't know how many other startups that have to do with culture and something traditional and fashion and design. We are like a social enterprise. We have many designers, we sell their artworks, we pay them for their artworks, they take all the publicity, and we are like a social enterprise. It's very difficult, but people don't take the risk to make things like that.
Finally, tell me a little more about the gallery space and also the exhibitions, how you work with kind of museums and that aspect. So there is, on the one hand, just selling the scarves, but you are also displaying them.
Yes, and if you visit one of our silk spots in retail shops, in mall, it's like a gallery also. It's more creative. And the people that work and sell the scarves, they're selling them as a piece of art. They start talking about the designer first and the raw material and the tradition in soufflé, and afterwards about if it suits in the colors, and fashion comes second. About exhibition, we have silk because it's a bit windy and colorful, and it has touch. You can explore many senses with silk and the artworks on silk. It's very impressive when we set up exhibitions. And when it comes to other museums, we study painting with the curators and the people from the cultural organization. We try to rethink about them and redesign them and make it wearable and have another view of these works. But when it comes to exhibitions and installation, silk is very, very impressive because it has flow. It's alive.
That was Vasiliki Zafiria Ypsilanti, founder of Mantility. You can learn more by heading to mantility.com. And that's it for this episode of the programme. We'll be back at the same time next week. Do look out for Eureka, available every Friday. The Entrepreneurs was produced by Laura Kramer, with audio editing by Tamsin Howard. You can listen again and find out more about the show at monocle.com. And you can follow us and catch up with the archive via your preferred podcast platform. If you'd like to get in touch with the team, email Laura on lrk@monocle.com. I'm Tom Edwards. Goodbye, and thanks for listening to The Entrepreneurs.